Why Indonesia might ditch the US for China, the real cost of Trump's trade war with Indonesia, and Southeast Asia power shift. Disclaimer: this video is for informational and commentary purposes only. All opinions expressed are based on publicly available information, market trends, and personal analysis. The mention of any brands or companies is not intended to defame, misrepresent, or harm their reputation. All brand names, logos, and trademarks are the property of their respective owners and are used here under fair use for educational and editorial purposes. Viewers are encouraged to do their own research and form their own opinions. If the US was trying to push Indonesia into China's arms, well, mission accomplished. Slapping a 32% tariff on Indonesian imports is pretty much the perfect way to make that happen. To put that in perspective, other nearby countries like Singapore, the Philippines, and even Australia only got hit with a 10% tariff. So yeah, Indonesia definitely got singled out, and not in a good way. Naturally, this didn't sit well in Jakarta. The business leaders were frustrated, and the Indonesian government is now scrambling to show it's doing something about it. They've announced plans to send a high-ranking delegation to Washington, hoping to negotiate a better deal and calm the nerves of the business community, especially Kadin, the Indonesian Chamber of Commerce. But here's the thing: if Donald Trump stays firm on this, that trip might end up being a whole lot of expensive meetings with zero results. Why the tough stance on Indonesia? That's the million-dollar question. Trump seems to have a particular grudge against the country. Despite Indonesia being one of America's top trading partners, he's never visited, not once, in either of his presidencies. He's managed to visit 25 other countries, including the Philippines, which is right next door, but somehow skipped over Indonesia. What makes that even more ironic is that Trump actually has personal business interests in Indonesia, like a luxury resort project in Bali. So clearly he knows the place exists. All in all, it's a weird mix of high tariffs, personal snubs, and political posturing. And it's pushing Indonesia to look elsewhere for trade and support. And guess who's standing right there, ready to roll out the red carpet? Yep, China. So what's really going on here? Is this about business, payback, or just another classic case of Trump being Trump? Hey, quick pause before we keep going. If you're enjoying this so far and want more content like this, global stories made simple with a chill vibe, make sure to hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. And while you're at it, give the video a thumbs up, drop a comment to share your thoughts, and maybe even share it with a friend who'd find this interesting too. Alright, back to the story. Well, if you follow the money, you'll notice something interesting. The US had a $7.9 billion trade deficit with Indonesia last year. That means the US bought way more from Indonesia than Indonesia bought from the US. And guess what? That number went up by 5.4% from the year before. So, in Trump's eyes, Indonesia's starting to look like a freeloading guest at America's trade party. The White House, for its part, says this is all about leveling the playing field for American businesses. Their argument? That countries like Indonesia aren't exactly playing fair when it comes to trade rules. One example they like to throw out: ethanol. Indonesia puts a 30% tariff on ethanol imports from the US. Ethanol made from stuff like molasses and palm waste. Meanwhile, the US only charges 2.5% when Indonesia sends the same product over. Big difference, right? From Trump's point of view, this kind of imbalance is what he calls being taken advantage of. And in true Trump fashion, his solution isn't to talk it out. It's to hit back hard with tariffs that sting. But here's the twist. While Trump's trying to teach Indonesia a lesson, it might end up being the US that loses out, especially if Indonesia starts getting cozy with China instead. And it's not just the tariffs that have people grumbling. There are also long-standing complaints about Indonesia's tight trade rules, like the strict licensing process and a rule that says any export earnings over $250,000 have to be brought back into the country. For foreign investors, that's a major headache. It's like trying to do business with one hand tied behind your back. One industry really feeling the heat right now? Furniture. And this one hits close to home, literally for former Indonesian President Joko Widodo, or Jokowi. Before politics, Jokowi built his name and his fortune in Central Java's furniture scene. Now, with his son Gibran as the country's vice president, it's not just about business, it's personal. With US tariffs hitting that sector hard, it sends the wrong message to someone who still holds serious influence in Indonesia's political circles. If the US wants to keep Jokowi on side and maintain strong ties with a country that plays a key role in the region, this isn't the way to do it. Washington might be saying, hey, we still want to be friends, but actions speak louder. And right now, it feels like the US is pulling away, putting up barriers instead of building bridges, especially in Southeast Asia, a region it once worked hard to stay connected to. Meanwhile, while the US is busy burning bridges, China's out here laying down red carpets. Indonesia has long tried to stay neutral in the big power struggle between the US and China. Its foreign policy motto: rowing between two reefs. In other words, keeping a careful balance between major powers. But with the US throwing punches and China offering handshakes, that balance is getting harder to maintain. China, meanwhile, is playing the long game, and playing it really well. Even before Indonesia's new president, Prabowo Subianto, officially took office, Chinese President Xi Jinping was already rolling out the red carpet. Literally. They didn't just meet and do the usual photo op handshake. Nope, they got straight to business. Big business. China promised Indonesia an additional $10 billion in loans, on top of the $22 billion the country already owes Beijing. That's a whole lot of cash, and it's not just being thrown around randomly either. The money's going toward big-ticket items like infrastructure, renewable energy projects, digital technology, and agriculture. This isn't fluff or vague promises. It's real money going into real projects, like that flashy whoosh bullet train from Jakarta to Bandung, which has already become a symbol of China's growing influence in Indonesia. It's fast, it's sleek, and it screams, "Made possible by China." Now, to be fair, the US has made some effort. President Biden flew to Bali for the G20 summit in 2022, and Vice President Kamala Harris showed up in Jakarta for a regional meet in 2023. There were friendly vibes, handshakes, and all the usual diplomatic smiles. They even announced a comprehensive strategic partnership, which sounds impressive. But in the world of international diplomacy, it's basically the equivalent of saying, yeah, we're cool. The reality? Not much really changed after that. Fast forward to today, and now with Trump stepping back into the spotlight, throwing around big tariffs and doubling down on his tough-on-trade persona, that flicker of warmth between the US and Indonesia is starting to fizzle. Meanwhile, China is sliding in smoothly with open arms and open checkbooks. They're not picking fights, they're making friends and deals. So while the US is out here slapping on tariffs and talking about leveling the playing field, China is saying, hey, need some money? Want to build a train? Let's be pals. And honestly, if you're Indonesia, staring at a massive tariff wall from the US and a mountain of opportunity from China, which way are you more likely to lean? For years now, the US and China have been locked in a quiet tug-of-war for influence in Southeast Asia, and the Malacca Strait is right at the heart of it. This narrow stretch of water might not sound all that exciting, but it's one of the world's most important shipping routes. Whoever has influence here has serious sway over global trade. And right now, it's looking like China's pulling ahead. Sure, the US has tried to keep a foot in the door. President Biden made some headline-worthy visits to Indonesia, like showing up for the G20 summit in Bali back in 2022. Vice President Kamala Harris followed up in 2023 for a regional summit in Jakarta. So, it's not like the US is completely missing in action. But here's the thing. While Washington talks about partnerships, Beijing shows up with ready-to-go deals and fewer conditions. The offers are fast, the money is big, and the paperwork, way less of a hassle. That kind of no-nonsense approach is hard to compete with, especially for a country like Indonesia that's trying to grow fast and stay independent at the same time. Biden once told then-President Jokowi that stronger ties with the US would be a huge win for Indonesia. But from Jakarta's point of view, it's starting to feel less like a partnership and more like a pile of rules, pressure, and now tariffs. Not exactly the dream deal they were promised. Jokowi, ever the diplomat, didn't cause a scene. He responded with a calm and classy statement. Indonesia is always open to working with any country, as long as it's for peace and humanity. That sounds lovely on paper, but let's be real. Peace and humanity are hard to focus on when your exports are getting hit with 32% tariffs and your economy is caught in the middle of a global power struggle. Now, with Trump throwing out old trade deals and cranking up the pressure, that message of neutrality is getting harder and harder to hold on to. For now, we're all waiting to see what Indonesia does next. Government offices have been mostly quiet. No big statements, no dramatic moves. Yet, one thing's crystal clear, Indonesia's in a tough spot. On one side, it's staring down massive tariffs from the US, a country it's long seen as a strategic partner. On the other side, it's deep in debt with China, which is offering loans, projects, and a fast-growing presence across the archipelago. Basically, Jakarta is caught between a rock and a hard place. If things don't cool down, the US risks doing exactly what it says it doesn't want to, pushing Indonesia straight into China's open arms. And in the big geopolitical chess match playing out in Southeast Asia, that could turn out to be a major own goal. At the end of the day, it's simple. Allies want respect, not pressure. If Washington forgets that, it might just lose a friend and help its biggest rival win the game. And that's a wrap for today. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to give it a like, drop a comment, I'd love to hear your thoughts, and share it if you think someone else would enjoy it too. And hey, if you haven't yet, go ahead and subscribe for more chill, thought-provoking content just like this. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.